My daddy told me I wasn't invited and praised my jobless sister on Mother's Day. Now they're back begging. But my reply left them with lifelong regret. I'm a 34-year-old male and own a construction company in Phoenix, specializing in high-end backyard renovations, pools, outdoor kitchens, fire features, the works. What most don't see is the 5 years of pure hell it took to build this business. I started with just me, a used truck and maxed out credit cards in 2019. The first year I took any job that paid, deck repairs, fence installations, concrete patching. I put in 18-hour days, 7 days a week. My hands were permanently stained with concrete dust, and my back felt like it was held together with duct tape. I slept in my truck on job sites during the week to save on gas. My bedroom was the cab of a 2008 F-150 with 173,000 miles on it and a heater that only worked half the time. Winter nights in Arizona aren't as mild as people think when you're sleeping in a metal box. I lost my apartment after a client stiffed me on a $12,000 patio job. The guy claimed the stonework wasn't exactly like the picture, even though the contract specifically said natural stone varies in color. I learned an expensive lesson about payment schedules and deposits. A lawyer wanted $5,000 just to start the process, which I didn't have. In year 2, I landed a small pool installation for a retired couple. Before that, my portfolio was just phone pics of decks and patios. They took a chance because their grandson played on the same high school football team I did years back. Family connections will only get you a chance, you still have to deliver. They referred me to their neighbor, who referred me to their son. Networking 101. I hired my first employee, Miguel, who's still with me today. I found him working as a day laborer outside Home Depot. The guy had more talent than half the contractors I'd met. He just needed papers and a chance. I paid for his certification courses myself. Best investment I ever made. Year 3 supply chain chaos nearly killed us. Lumber tripled in price overnight. I had to explain to clients why their quotes suddenly jumped 40%. We lost half our projects. I started hunting materials like it was a competitive sport, driving to suppliers at 4:30 a.m. to be first in line, calling in favors from guys I'd helped out, trading materials with other contractors to make sure neither of us went under. One week, I drove 1,200 miles between Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico, hunting down specialty tiles a client insisted on. I slept maybe 20 hours that entire week. The client never knew, to them it was just on schedule. Year 4 was a turning point. A local news anchor hired us for a small job, then posted about it. Our Instagram following tripled in a week. We started focusing exclusively on high-end projects. I turned down a $50,000 renovation to focus on a $120,000 build that would get us noticed. It was a risky move, but playing it safe wouldn't get me out of that truck. The renovation client cussed me out for passing, then called back 3 months later, willing to pay double my original quote. Now, we're 20 employees strong with 3 crews running simultaneously and a waiting list 3 months deep. Last quarter was our best ever, $430,000 in completed projects with a 22% profit margin. By Phoenix contractor standards, that's the major leagues. I don't drive Lambos or post Rolexes. My flex is efficiency. Every foreman has a company card with spend caps I monitor live. We upgraded to Builder Trend last year. Client quotes, change orders, and project schedules in one dashboard, cutting admin time almost in half. I fired a guy last year who showed up twice smelling like vape juice and excuses. I told the crew exactly why. If a guy can't show up on time, sober and ready, he's not just hurting himself, he's risking all our paychecks. That's not drama, that's policy. Every dollar in my account, I earned by breaking my back and outworking everyone else. No handouts, no family loans, no help. This matters because my family still treats me like I'm a broke teenager instead of someone who out-earns both parents combined. It was at one of those high-end projects where I met Ellie, a 32-year-old female interior designer for the client, coordinating with us on the outdoor kitchen finishes. She's smart as hell, gorgeous, and refreshingly direct. None of that playing hard to get nonsense. She texted me about the granite samples and added, "You free Friday? I know a place with decent tacos." She grew up with her grandmother. Her parents bailed when she was 8. She worked through design school while taking care of her grandmother with dementia. The woman knows what real struggle looks like. When we started dating, she'd sometimes stop by job sites with coffee for the crew, not just me. That's how I knew she was different. She respected the work itself, not just the result. Quick family breakdown. Dad, Rick, 62, male, manages a grocery chain district, makes around $85,000. Mom, Diana, 58, female, is an elementary school administrator. Sister, Jen, 36, female, claims to be a marketing consultant but hasn't had a real client in years. She lives in my parents' basement while pretending to run a business empire from her Instagram account. The room is exactly as she left it in high school. Participation trophies, boy band posters, and all. She just added a ring light and a girl boss sign for her daily motivation videos that get 12 views. Growing up, the family dynamic was crystal clear. Jen could do no wrong, and I could do no right. When she dropped out of college senior year to find herself in Europe, they called it brave self-discovery. When I worked construction during summers to pay for business school, they called it settling for manual labor. Dad would walk through our job sites, pointing out mistakes that were actually just unfinished work. He still does it. Last year, he visited the $300,000 lake house project we were building and told the homeowner, within earshot, that the slope looked off on that deck. It wasn't. We were in the middle of laser leveling the supports. The homeowner got nervous until I showed him the plans and equipment. Mom wasn't much better. When I made the dean's list 3 semesters straight in business school, she said, "If only you applied yourself like this in high school." I was working 30 hours a week during college. In high school, I was working 15 hours and playing sports. Jen's been a nightmare since day one. 3 years ago at Thanksgiving, she announced she was going plant-based, literally as Mom put the turkey on the table. She made a show of eating only side dishes while making gagging noises whenever someone cut into the meat. This is the same Jen who I'd seen demolish a bacon cheeseburger the week before. When I said, "Funny how your plant-based diet includes those leather boots you bought last week," she threw cranberry sauce at me. I just wiped it off and kept eating. While everyone pretended not to notice another time at my cousin's wedding, she cornered me to explain how my business was destroying the environment because concrete production creates carbon emissions. This from someone who takes 40-minute showers and leaves every light on in the house. I asked how she enjoyed driving her SUV to the salon for her weekly blowout. She didn't speak to me for 2 months, most peaceful 2 months of my life. The hypocrisy is what gets me. She preaches about sustainability while buying fast fashion every week, talks about income inequality but hasn't worked a real job in years, posts about hustle culture while sleeping until noon daily. Ellie met my family for the first time last Christmas. Jen showed up with this skinny dude wearing a turtleneck, who she introduced as her business partner. They spent the entire dinner talking about their revolutionary wellness platform that would disrupt the mindfulness space. This app supposedly combined meditation, cryptocurrency, and social media, the startup equivalent of throwing random buzzwords in a blender. When I asked basic questions like revenue model or user acquisition costs, she got defensive and said, "Not everything is about money." I just smirked and said, "Hard to make a difference from Mom's basement." Dad nearly choked on his water after dinner. Jen cornered Ellie in the kitchen while I was grabbing drinks. I walked in to hear Jen saying something about how Brody's little construction phase won't last, and how Ellie should have a backup plan for when it all falls apart. Ellie just smiled and said, "Actually, I've seen his books. Maybe you should ask him for investment advice instead of whatever that turtleneck guy is selling you." Jen stormed off and Ellie just winked at me. That's my girl. I've always hated family gatherings, but skipping them results in weeks of texts about how I'm too important for family now. So I show up, keep my head down, and count the minutes until I can leave. A week before Mother's Day, I called Dad to ask about plans. His tone was weirdly casual. "We're just doing a small thing this year. Your mom wants to keep it low-key." I figured that meant the usual lunch at their place. Flowers, nothing special. Before hanging up, he added, "Actually, don't bother coming this time. No need for gifts either. Focus on your business. The drive from Phoenix is a pain in the ass." For a second, I felt something like relief. Maybe they finally understood I was building something legitimate. But 17 years of family dynamics had taught me to be suspicious. 2 days later, I was having drinks with my buddy Derek at our usual spot. We met in business school, and he now runs his own plumbing company. We talk about supplier issues, employee management, and expansion strategy. You know, actual business stuff, not Instagram follower counts. Derek looked skeptical when I told him about my dad's call. "That sounds like a trap. If you don't show, you're the one who skipped Mother's Day. If you do show, they'll act like you're imposing." Ellie, who joined us after finishing with a client, agreed. "Your sister's been posting all week about some big Mother's Day surprise. Something's definitely up." Ellie follows Jen on social media purely for intelligence gathering, says it's like keeping tabs on a particularly unstable weather system. Derek's words stuck with me. I needed a gift that would be impossible to dismiss. Then I remembered a conversation from years ago. Mom had mentioned wanting to go to Skyrock, this fancy wellness retreat in Sedona, saying it was her dream getaway but too expensive. Dad had laughed it off, maybe when we win the lottery. The next morning at the office, I looked up Skyrock Sedona. They had a rejuvenation weekend package, 3 days, 2 nights, spa treatments, guided meditation, hiking, all meals included. $3,800 for 2 people. 5 years ago, that amount would have been my entire emergency fund. These days, I could write the check without blinking. Business was good. We just finished a $230,000 backyard project for a tech executive that came in under budget and ahead of schedule. The client was already referring friends. I booked the package for the weekend after Mother's Day, put my parents' names down, and paid in full, even arranged for champagne in their room. For once, I was actually looking forward to a family event. I should have known better. Sunday morning, Ellie and I made the 2-hour drive from Phoenix to Tucson. I told Miguel I'd be unavailable all day, a rare occurrence since I'm usually answering client calls 7 days a week. As soon as I turned onto my parents' street, I knew something was wrong. Both sides were lined with cars. I counted at least 15 vehicles, including my aunt's Range Rover and my uncle's ridiculous Hummer that he bought for off-roading but has never taken off a paved road in its life. I found a spot 3 houses down and walked up with the envelope containing the retreat reservations, Ellie at my side, looking incredible in a simple blue dress. She squeezed my hand, sensing my tension. The front door was unlocked, so I let myself in, following the noise to the backyard. Just as I reached the patio doors, I heard my uncle. I thought Brody wasn't coming today. Then my dad, he said he couldn't make it. Probably for the best. That douche would just bring down the mood with his contractor stories. At least we have Jen here showing us her new presentation. I froze, hidden by the doorframe. Ellie's grip on my hand tightened. The backyard was transformed, tables decorated with elaborate flower arrangements, a happy Mother's Day, Diana banner, catering staff setting up what looked like a gourmet spread. At least 30 people mingled on the professionally landscaped patio that I'd offered to renovate for free 3 years ago, but they declined because your sister's friend knows a guy. My cousin Theo spotted me first. "Holy, Brody is here. Welcome, bro." Every head turned. My dad quickly recovered with a dismissive, "just joking around, son," before turning away to talk to my uncle like I wasn't even there. As I stepped into the backyard, the whispers started immediately. Comments about showing up empty-handed, still driving the same truck, how Jen just got a big investor for her app. I caught phrases like "must not be doing as well as he claims" and "still has dirt under his fingernails." That last one was accurate. I'd been helping a crew with some stonework the day before because one guy called in sick. Owner still gets his hands dirty when needed. Imagine that. I spotted Jen holding court near the bar, wearing oversized designer sunglasses and gesturing to a group of relatives. When she saw me, she smirked and whispered something to our cousin, who giggled. Then her eyes landed on Ellie and rolled instantly. I made my way toward Mom at the main table. She frowned and asked, "Why didn't you call about coming?" Then she looked at my hands. "You didn't even bring anything for your mother? Wow, real classy." Then she turned to Ellie with a fake smile. "And you brought your girlfriend. How nice. Did you know this is a family event?" Ellie just smiled back. "I'm his fiancé, actually. We got engaged last month." She held up her left hand, showing the ring I'd proposed with after landing our biggest contract to date. I guess our announcement got lost in the mail, just like our invitation. I started to reach for the envelope in my pocket, but stopped myself. The setup was clear. This wasn't a last-minute gathering. This was a planned event I was deliberately excluded from. Just then, Jen's business partner Daniel approached, wearing another ridiculous turtleneck despite the 85-degree heat. He looked like a Silicon Valley stereotype playing dress-up, complete with those minimalist sneakers that cost $400 but look like hospital shoes. He made a condescending comment about my construction work, asking if I'd thought about getting into tech since that's where the real money is. This from a guy who hasn't shipped a working product yet. I casually mentioned we just finished a project for the CFO of the company that rejected their app investment last month. Nice guy Brad. Mentioned something about your pitch deck having unrealistic projections. Small world. Daniel's smug expression vanished, while Jen's eyes narrowed. I spotted an empty chair near my cousin Theo and headed for it, Ellie by my side. Theo has always been good with me. He's a firefighter, hates BS as much as I do. Just as I was about to sit, Jen appeared again, telling me that was Daniel's seat and I could grab a folding chair from the garage. She pointedly looked at Ellie and added, "And I'm not sure where your +1 is supposed to sit. We didn't plan for extras." Theo stood up immediately. "I'll help you," he said, following me inside. As we walked to the garage, he whispered, "What the hell, man? Dad said this was supposed to be small." Then, 2 days ago, Aunt Diana called, saying it's this whole catered thing. Every time I asked who was coming, she would change the subject. Now I know why. "Apparently, I didn't make the cut," I said, grabbing 2 metal folding chairs. We returned to the yard, setting up at the edge of the patio. Theo placed his chair next to mine instead of returning to his table. A small gesture that meant more than he probably realized. At noon, Dad clinked his glass for attention, announced it was time to celebrate our wonderful Diana, and invited everyone to enjoy lunch from the caterer. After the obligatory song and photos, people lined up at the catering table. I was about to join when Dad loudly announced, "Brody, we didn't include you in the head count for the caterer, just grab a drink or something." The entire backyard went silent. I stared at my dad, trying to process what he just said. "What, are you kidding me right now?" The words came out spontaneously. "Language, Brody," he said. "And no, I'm not kidding. We paid $35 per person for this food, and you weren't on the list." I looked around, some embarrassed faces, others clearly enjoying the show, and most suddenly very interested in their drinks. Then Mom stood up, straightening her blouse. "Brody, we told you not to come today. You chose to ignore that. We can't just magically make food appear." Theo spoke up. "Mrs. D, Brody can share my plate. I won't eat much anyway." Dad waved his hand dismissively. "Nah, he showed up uninvited. He can wait until everyone else has eaten. If there's anything left," I said. "Since when do I need an invitation to see my mother on Mother's Day? You want me to wait until everyone's done like I'm some stray dog?" Ellie chimed in. "So, just to be clear, you're telling your own son he can't eat at your family gathering because you didn't budget for him?" Jen jumped in, attacking. "Nobody asked for your opinion. You don't even belong here, so keep your mouth shut." I pointed at her. "Watch your freaking mouth, you don't get to talk to her like that." "Neither does Brody, apparently," Ellie shot back. She turned to me. "Babe, we can grab lunch on the way home. This isn't worth it, that was it." Something inside me just snapped. Not in a rage way, but in a crystal clear way, like when you've been staring at a complex blueprint and suddenly see the solution. "Just so you all know, I actually did bring something." I pulled out the envelope from my pocket and handed it to Theo. "Will you open it for me, bro?" He looked confused and carefully opened the envelope. His eyes widened as he read the reservation confirmation. At my request, he read it out loud. "Skyrock Wellness Retreat, Sedona. Premium rejuvenation package for 2. 3 days, 2 nights in a mountain view suite. All meals, spa treatments, and activities included. Guests, Rick and Diana. Total value, $3,800, paid in full." "Holy Brody," he said. Everyone fell silent. Several relatives started checking their phones, confirming the price. Aunt Candace was now scrolling through the Skyrock website, eyes widening at the photos. You could have heard a pin drop. Mom's mouth literally fell open. Then they tried to backpedal. "Brody, we didn't know," Mom finally said. "Clearly," I replied evenly. "Look, we were just joking around," Dad said. "You know how family is. Sit down, have some food." I stayed standing. "That package includes couples massage, guided meditation, hikes, and a private dinner on the terrace overlooking the mountains. Everything Mom mentioned wanting to do someday when you had the money." Daniel tried to interject. "Diana, sometimes the universe works in mysterious ways. Perhaps this retreat could be—" "Shut up, Daniel," several people said simultaneously. I turned back to Theo. "Those reservations are in my parents' names, but they can be transferred. I'd like you and Sarah to have them." Theo looked stunned, saying this was meant for my parents. His face said $3,800 more clearly than any words could. "Not anymore," I said firmly. "My parents made it crystal clear today where I stand in this family." Dad stepped forward, face red. "You can't do that. Those are our reservations. Actually, they're my reservations. I paid for them, and I can give them to whoever I want." I turned to Theo. "You and Sarah haven't had a vacation since the twins were born 3 years ago, right?" "Brody, please," Mom tried, her voice suddenly sweet. "We were just surprised to see you. You know we love you. We can all talk about this later as a family." I laughed. "Yeah, sure." I told Theo I'd call Skyrock the next day to change the names on the reservation and text him the details. "You're making a scene," Jen hissed, looking around at the stunned relatives. "No, you all made the scene," I replied. "I'm just finally walking off the set." As I headed toward the gate to leave, Ellie at my side, my cousin Tiffany, 29, female, called out that she was coming with us. Tiffany is Jen's younger sister, who moved to Colorado for a developer job. When I told her she didn't have to leave, she insisted, saying what they did was completely messed up, and she'd been watching this nonsense for years. "Someone finally said it," she muttered, grabbing her jacket. "I've been biting my tongue since 2015. Theo joined us, returning the envelope and saying to keep it safe until tomorrow. He was already texting Sarah about unexpected plans. To my surprise, my Uncle Joe, Dad's younger brother, who moved to Alaska years ago and became the family's black sheep, was leaning against my truck. He'd flown down for the special day, thinking things might have changed after 10 years. One look at the situation told him they hadn't. "Some things never change," he said, clapping my shoulder. I was about to make my exit too. "Mind if I join?" The 5 of us ended up at a nearby sports bar, ordering massive amounts of food and swapping family war stories. Uncle Joe had built a successful fishing charter business in Alaska after cutting contact with the family. Tiffany was killing it as a software developer, and Theo, while happy as a firefighter, was dealing with his own family drama. Between bites of a burger that tasted 10 times better than any catered food could have, Uncle Joe explained that my parents had always cared more about appearances than reality. They'd rather have a prestigious daughter who's actually broke than a successful son in a blue-collar business. Your dad wanted to be an architect but couldn't hack the math, he said. So, he manages grocery stores but pretends he's an executive. Your success reminds him of what he couldn't achieve. Then Tiffany revealed that Jen hadn't had a real client in over a year. She lived in their basement, making fake business calls all day, sometimes talking to herself with no one on the other end. She drove for DoorDash 3 nights a week but told everyone she was networking with executives. Last month, she asked me to pretend to be a Silicon Valley investor on a Zoom call, Tiffany said. Wanted me to speak with a British accent for some reason. I refused, so she got mad and blocked me for a week. That explained why my success bothered them so much. Their golden child was failing while I was thriving, but they couldn't admit it. Easier to keep pretending, even when the evidence was right in front of them. Ellie mentioned Jen had DM'd her last month, asking if we needed a brand ambassador because of her excellent social media presence. This was barely a week after she went on IG Live, ranting about capitalism exploiting creatives. Ellie didn't respond. Her last post had 8 likes, including one from an NFT bot offering investment synergy. Ellie showed me the message, and I laughed. You don't hire the person who lit your truck on fire just because you're low on gas. She didn't respond. Guess she couldn't find the right filter for that. I nearly choked on my water. Jen, who had been criticizing my business for years, secretly wanted to work for me. The irony was too perfect. Theo suddenly mentioned Sarah's gallbladder surgery last year when they were short on the mortgage due to medical bills. Someone anonymously paid it, and they always wondered who it was. I tried to change the subject, but Theo pressed. Finally, I shrugged and said, You guys brought us dinner every night for a week when I broke my ankle on that job site 3 years ago. Sarah watched my dog when I had to fly to that supplier meeting. What goes around comes around. Man, Theo said, and today they wouldn't even let you eat. We discussed my plan going forward, complete cutoff. Uncle Joe approved, saying it was the best decision he ever made. First year is tough, but after that comes freedom, he warned. They'll try everything. Guilt trips, health scares, financial emergencies. Stay strong. Your real family is at this table. Tiffany invited Ellie and me to her housewarming party in Denver the following month, offering to introduce us to people who aren't complete narcissists. Plus, we can go mountain biking if you're into that, she added. There's more to life than family drama. For the first time that day, I felt something like peace. The fallout was immediate. By the time we got back to Phoenix that night, I had 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. I ignored them all and slept better than I had in years. First thing Monday morning, I called my attorney, Emma. We'd met when I needed contracts drafted for the business 3 years ago, and she'd handled several legal issues since then. I asked her to update my will and business succession plan with what she called a nuclear option, a no-blood clause that explicitly excluded my parents and sister from any inheritance or business interest regardless of circumstances. When she noted this was pretty definitive, I simply said recent events had clarified my priorities. Families are complicated, she said, not pressing for details. This is why I like Emma. No unnecessary questions, just efficient solutions. 2 days later, I signed the paperwork. My estate would go to a combination of trusted employees like Miguel, a scholarship fund for trade school students, and specific relatives like Theo, Tiffany, and Uncle Joe. My parents and Jen were explicitly excluded, with language stating that any attempt to contest would trigger a penalty clause directing funds to charities they'd hate. Emma suggested environmental causes, knowing my sister's hypocrisy around her carbon footprint. Next, I called Skyrock and transferred the reservation to Theo and Sarah. Then I blocked my parents' and Jen's numbers and went back to work. Business was booming. We just landed a contract to build a custom pool and outdoor kitchen for a local news anchor. The same week, I promoted Miguel to operations director and gave him a 15% raise. He'd earned it, stepping up during the chaos and keeping jobs on schedule while I dealt with personal stuff. That's what real loyalty looks like. 3 weeks later, my parents and sister showed up at my office without an appointment. Laura, our receptionist, buzzed me. There's a Rick, Diana, and Jennifer here to see you. No appointment. They claim it's urgent family business. I told her to send them back. Might as well rip off the Band-Aid. When they walked in, they looked nothing like the confident people from Mother's Day. Mom looked exhausted, Dad's posture was slumped, and even Jen looked disheveled. Gone was the designer outfit, replaced with what looked like actual business casual attire, playing dress-up for a loan request, I realized. Dad awkwardly complimented my office space while looking around at the modern design with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown. "Real professional setup," he said, as if surprised. "Those awards real?" He gestured to the wall of industry recognitions. "No, Dad, I bought fake awards to impress clients," I replied dryly. "What do you want? Is that how you greet family?" Mom asked. "We haven't heard from you in weeks." I cut to the chase and asked what they wanted. Mom claimed they were worried about me, but I immediately called it out. They were there because they wanted something. Jen mentioned family drama. Aunt Karen wasn't speaking to Dad, Tiffany had blocked Mom online, and Uncle Joe had sent everyone an email calling them toxic. I smiled and said that sounded like their problem, not mine. Dad attempted an apology, calling their behavior inappropriate. I pointed out that inappropriate doesn't begin to describe telling someone they can't eat at a family gathering or calling them a loser in front of everyone. That was a momentary lapse in judgment, he said, like he was describing forgetting to signal a lane change. After some back and forth, Dad finally admitted they needed about $25,000 due to financial difficulties. That was the real reason for their visit, not an apology but a cash request. The pieces clicked into place immediately. When I asked what the money was for, they hesitated before Dad admitted it was for Jen's wellness app. They had invested their savings as seed money, and the developer needed another $25,000 to finish the platform. I laughed and correctly guessed that the first $30,000 went to a fancy logo, professional photo shoots for Instagram, and gold foil business cards instead of actual software development. "Let me guess, the developer is Daniel's cousin who builds WordPress sites part-time?" I asked. Jen's expression confirmed it without words. "Amateurs, the lot of them." I explained that Daniel was scamming them, and they'd mortgaged their retirement to fund Jen's vanity project without asking a single critical question. "I could have introduced you to legitimate developers who would have built a working prototype for $5,000 before you committed another dime," I said. "But you never asked for my expertise because to you, I'm just the guy who plays with dirt for a living. Hell, for $25,000, I could have hired 2 junior devs and a UI guy off Upwork to build a working MVP with integrated analytics and a feedback loop. Instead, they blew it on logo design, gold foil cards, and paying a vegan TikTok girl to promote it. She deleted the video after 36 hours, 0 users, 0 feedback, 0 product. But hey, at least the app had a vibe. When Mom asked if I wouldn't help them, I stated that if they had treated me with basic decency, I probably would have helped without hesitation. I'd helped employees through tough times, paid for Miguel's son's emergency surgery last year without a second thought. But they were literally the last people I would give money to. "It's not about the money," I explained. "I made more than your loan amount last month in profit. It's about the pattern of behavior that led us here." Mom whispered something about family, and I firmly corrected her. "We share DNA, but that's not the same thing as family." I stood up and mentioned that Theo and Sarah had a wonderful time at Skyrock, showed them the photos they'd sent, including one of them raising glasses on the Mountain View terrace that should have been my parents'. Dad got angry, asking if that was it. Years of raising me, and I just cut them off. "You raised me to be self-sufficient," I said. "Congratulations, it worked." Jen tried one more angle, claiming she had a job offer in Chicago and needed $3,000 for an apartment security deposit. I simply congratulated her and suggested she call a bank for a loan. "Banks require income verification," she muttered. "So do I replied. Mom made one last plea, saying they knew they messed up and wanted a chance to make it right. I offered to send them the name of a financial advisor who helps people restructure debt and said I'd pay for the initial consultation. That was it. Dad protested that wasn't enough, and I calmly replied it was more than they deserved before asking them to leave. "If you ever want a real relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than what I can do for you, the door remains open," I said. "But it'll be on entirely new terms." After they left, Miguel checked on me. I told him I was doing better than good and asked about his house hunting progress. When he mentioned the difficult market, I offered a friends and family discount on renovation work to help make a fixer-upper more affordable. "You sure you want to mix business with friendship?" he asked. "You're not a friend," I replied. "Your family 3 months have passed. My parents occasionally try to contact me through various relatives, but I've made my position clear. Instead of the family I was born into, I've built something better, a circle of people who actually value each other." Last weekend, I flew to Denver for Tiffany's housewarming. Uncle Joe came down from Alaska. Theo and Sarah drove up from Tucson. Ellie and I finalized our wedding details while we were there. The ceremony's next month at a venue overlooking Camelback Mountain. We've already decided my parents and sister won't be invited. My company just broke ground on our biggest project to date, a complete backyard transformation for a former NFL player that will be featured in a home magazine. We're expanding to a second location next quarter, And I'm bringing in Miguel as a junior partner. He nearly broke down when I told him, said he'd never expected to own part of a business in America when he crossed the border 10 years ago. As for my parents and Jen, I heard through Theo that Dad's wellness app investment is gone. The developer disappeared with the money. Jen's job offer mysteriously fell through. They're telling everyone I abandoned the family in their time of need. But here's the thing. For the first time in my life, I don't care what they say about me. I'm too busy building something real, which, as it turns out, actually matters. When the dust finally clears, Ellie and I are getting married next weekend. We're keeping it small, just the people who actually support us. Uncle Joe is officiating, Miguel is my best man, Tiffany is helping coordinate everything, and Theo and Sarah are bringing the twins. No drama, no passive-aggressive comments, no one telling me I can't eat the food at my own wedding. We even had assigned seating. Ellie's friend did the calligraphy cards. When one of Theo's cousins jokingly asked if Jen had a seat, I just smiled and said, "Didn't budget for extras." Uncle Joe nearly snorted his drink, the table cracked up. It felt like justice, but quiet. Just the family we chose, celebrating something genuine.